The final battle began not with weapons, but with words. Admiral Lisa Harper stood before the Galactic Assembly, a body that hadn't met in over 20,000 years. Representatives from every species in the galaxy had gathered on the neutral, World of Harmony station to witness humanity's return. For 30,000 years, you have lived under a lie, Admiral Harper announced to the assembled delegates. The Zephyrian Empire told you that humans were a violent species that threatened galactic peace. They told you that our extinction was necessary for your safety. Today, I will show you the truth. The great display screens around the assembly hall lit up with evidence that Elena Rodriguez had gathered from the Zephyrian archives. Military records, communication logs, classified reports. All of it proving that humanity had been peaceful traders and explorers when the Zephyrians launched their unprovoked attack. We were murdered not because we were violent, but because we were successful, Admiral Harper continued. Because other species were beginning to see us as equals. Because the Zephyrians feared losing their monopoly on galactic power. The alien delegates stirred uneasily as they saw the evidence. Many of their own species had been subjugated by similar methods. The pattern was clear and undeniable. But High Counselor Zexron was not finished. From his position at the head of the Zephyrian delegation, he activated a hidden communication device. Across the galaxy, final protocol weapons began their activation sequences. You may have revealed our methods, Zexran announced, but you cannot stop the inevitable. Rather than lose control of the galaxy, we will destroy it. Every world that has harbored human sympathizers will be eliminated. Every species that has aided your resurrection will share your fate. The delegates erupted in panic. Representatives began frantically trying to contact their homeworlds. But Admiral Harper remained calm. Phoenix, she said quietly into her communicator. All final. Protocol weapons have been secured, came the AI's immediate response. Human forces arrived at each location 3.7 minutes before Zephyrian activation teams. The threat has been neutralized. The silence in the assembly hall was deafening. Zexarin stared at Admiral Harper in disbelief. Impossible. Those locations were classified at the highest levels. Nothing has been classified from us for 30,000 years, Admiral Harper replied. We have been watching you, learning from you, preparing for this moment since the day you thought you destroyed us. On Luna, Colonel Ryan Blake was coordinating the final phase of the operation. Human forces had not just prevented the activation of the final protocol weapons. They had seized control of every major Zephyrian military installation in the galaxy. Report from Captain Rodriguez, Steve Wilson announced. The Zephyrian Homeworld Defense Fleet has surrendered without firing a shot. They're requesting terms. And Captain Morrison reports successful liberation of the Kepler sector, 17 worlds freed with minimal casualties. Ryan nodded with satisfaction. The plan he had designed 30,000 years ago was working perfectly. Humanity had not simply returned to fight the Zephyrians. They had returned to replace them as the dominant force in the galaxy. But Admiral Harper had no interest in becoming galactic dictators. When she addressed the assembly again, her words surprised everyone present. Humanity does not seek to rule the galaxy, she announced. We have seen what happens when one species holds absolute power. Instead, we propose a new order, a true democracy of worlds, where every species has an equal voice in galactic affairs. The response was immediate and positive. Species that had been oppressed for millennia suddenly saw hope for genuine freedom. The Keth Mori war chief Sektar was the first to speak. The Keth Mori pledge our loyalty to this new coalition. Humans have proven themselves worthy of our trust. One by one, other species added their voices to the declaration. Even some Zephyrian delegates, led by the moderate Morvek, announced their support for the new order. "The old empire is dead," Morvek declared. "It died from its own corruption and cruelty. We welcome the chance to build something better." But the most important moment came when Jake Morrison took the floor. The former smuggler had become humanity's most effective ambassador, and his words carried weight with species throughout the galaxy. 30,000 years ago, humans tried to join the galactic community as partners and equals, Jake said. "We were destroyed for that attempt. Today we return not as conquerors, but as liberators. We offer every species in this galaxy the same thing we wanted for ourselves, the chance to grow, to learn, to reach our full potential without fear." The transformation of the galaxy happened faster than anyone had expected. Zephyrian military forces laid down their weapons rather than fight a hopeless war. Oppressed populations celebrated their freedom. Hidden human colonies emerged from hiding to take their place in galactic society. On Earth, Katie Wells watched the planet complete its resurrection. The blue skies and green oceans had returned. Ancient cities were rising from the ground, rebuilt by machines that had waited patiently for their creator's return. But the planet was not just for humans anymore. "The first group of alien refugees arrives tomorrow," she reported to Admiral Harper. "Representatives from 12 different species who want to help rebuild Earth as a symbol of the new galactic order." "Welcome them all," Admiral Harper replied. "Earth will be the capital of the new coalition, but it will belong to everyone. The Zephyrian Empire officially surrendered 6 months after the first human ships revealed themselves. The ceremony took place on Earth, in the great assembly hall that had been built where the United Nations headquarters once stood. High Counselor Zexron, now a prisoner awaiting trial for crimes against sentient life, made one final statement. "You think you have won," he told Admiral Harper. "But ruling a galaxy is harder than conquering one. The peace you have built will not last." "You're right," Admiral Harper agreed. "Peace is harder to maintain than war. But we have something you never understood. We have hope. We have the belief that different species can work together for the common good. And we have the patience to make it work." The trials of the Zephyrian war criminals were broadcast throughout the galaxy. The evidence of their crimes was overwhelming: genocide, slavery, the systematic suppression of technological and cultural advancement. But the sentences were not about revenge. They were about justice and the prevention of future atrocities. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, who had risked everything to expose the truth, became the first director of galactic justice. Her job was to ensure that no species would ever again be able to commit genocide without consequences. Danny Clark led the effort to share human technology with other species. The advances made during humanity's long exile were distributed freely to any civilization that wanted them. Faster-than-light travel became safer and more efficient. Medical technology extended lifespans across dozens of species. Agricultural innovations ended hunger on hundreds of worlds. "We're not doing this to maintain control," Danny explained to a gathering of alien scientists. "We're doing it because knowledge shared is knowledge multiplied. The more species that can contribute to galactic civilization, the stronger we all become." The most surprising development was the reconciliation with moderate Zephyrians. Morvek and his followers worked tirelessly to reform their species' culture and make amends for the crimes of their ancestors. They provided crucial intelligence about other threats in the galaxy and became valuable allies in building the new order. Guilt is not inherited, Admiral Harper told the reformed Zephyrian delegation. Your ancestors committed terrible crimes, but you are not responsible for their actions. You are only responsible for your choices going forward. 10 years after the revelation, Jake Morrison stood in the same assembly hall where humanity had once been sentenced to extinction. But now he was addressing the Galactic Council as Earth's elected representative, delivering humanity's annual report on the state of galactic civilization. Trade between species has increased by 400%, he reported. Scientific cooperation has led to breakthroughs that no single species could have achieved alone. Military conflicts have decreased to their lowest levels in recorded history. But the most important achievement, Jake continued, is something that cannot be measured in statistics. For the first time in galactic history, every species has the freedom to reach its full potential. Every civilization can contribute to our collective advancement. Every voice is heard in the councils of power. As Jake finished his speech, he thought about the journey that had brought him to this moment. From a simple smuggler to the voice of humanity on the galactic stage. From a species thought extinct to the leaders of a new galactic civilization. Phoenix, the AI that had preserved humanity through its darkest hour, had been right about one thing. The plan had worked perfectly, but it had worked not because of superior technology or military force. It had worked because humanity had never lost faith in the possibility of a better future. The final revelation came from an unexpected source. In the deepest archives of the Arsenal, technicians discovered a message left by the original architects of humanity's survival plan. It was addressed to the generation that would eventually reclaim the galaxy. The galaxy changed overnight. What had seemed like isolated incidents suddenly revealed themselves as part of a massive coordinated operation. Ships that had traded peacefully in Zephyrian space for decades suddenly deployed weapons that shouldn't exist. Mining stations transformed into military bases. Entire alien populations revealed themselves to be human colonies that had lived in hiding for thousands of years. Danny Clark stood in the main engineering bay of the Arsenal, watching as 30,000 years of hidden technology came online. The machines around him were building ships unlike anything currently flying in the galaxy. These weren't just weapons of war, they were statements of intent. The reactor core is stable, he reported to Admiral Harper. We can begin full production immediately. The ships emerging from the Arsenal's construction bays were beautiful and terrifying. They combined the best of ancient human engineering with advances developed during the long exile. Sleek hulls that could phase in and out of normal space. Weapons that could target enemies across multiple dimensions. Defenses that made them nearly invisible to conventional sensors. How many can we build? The Admiral asked. The automated. Systems are designed for rapid production. Give me 2 weeks and I can have a fleet of 500 vessels ready for deployment. But they didn't have 2 weeks. Reports were coming in from across the galaxy that Zephyrian forces were mobilizing for something big. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, still embedded in their command structure, was sending increasingly urgent warnings about the final protocol. On Earth, an amazing transformation was taking place. Katie Wells watched from her monitoring station as the planet's ancient biosphere awakened from its long sleep. Oceans that had been sterile for millennia suddenly bloomed with life. Forests began growing in areas that had been barren rock. The atmosphere grew cleaner by the hour. It's like watching a resurrection, she reported to Admiral Harper. The planet was never really dead. It was just waiting. But Earth wasn't just healing. It was preparing for war. Hidden beneath the recovering landscape were defense systems that made the arsenal look small. Orbital platforms that had been invisible for 30,000 years were powering up. Weapons that could destroy entire fleets were emerging from underground silos. Colonel Ryan Blake was coordinating the awakening from his command center on Luna. The scope of humanity's hidden preparations was staggering even to him, and he had helped design them. "Status report from the colonies," Captain Wilson announced. "All 47 hidden settlements are operational. Total population is now confirmed at 2.3 billion humans. Industrial capacity is at 80% of wartime levels and climbing. Military assets beyond our original projections. The automated defense systems have been building ships and weapons for the entire hibernation period. We have enough firepower to take on the entire Zephyrian fleet." But Ryan knew that raw firepower wouldn't be enough. The Zephyrians still controlled most of the galaxy, and they had hundreds of billions of alien populations under their rule. If the final protocol was activated, those populations would be used as human shields. The solution came from an unexpected source. Jake Morrison, still aboard the reactivated human ship Phoenix, received a communication from Tony Rodriguez. Tony had been monitoring alien communication networks and discovered something remarkable. "Jake, you need to hear this." Tony's excited voice came through the ship's speakers. "I've been tracking communications from the Outer Rim territories. There are alien resistance groups out there, species that have been fighting Zephyrian rule for thousands of years." "How many?" "At least 12 different species. Maybe more. They've been waiting for someone powerful enough to challenge the Empire. When they heard about the human resurgence, they started reaching out to our agents. This changed everything. Humanity wasn't alone in their fight against the Zephyrians. Other species had suffered under their rule and were ready to join the rebellion." Admiral Harper immediately dispatched Jake and his crew to make contact with these potential allies. Their first meeting was with a species called the Keth Mori, reptilian beings who had been enslaved by the Zephyrians for over 50,000 years. "We remember humans," their leader, War Chief Sektar, told Jake through the universal translator. "Before the Great Purge, humans were the only species brave enough to speak for the oppressed. We hoped you would return someday." "We're back," Jake replied simply. "And we're going to need your help." The alliance grew quickly. Species after species declared their willingness to fight alongside humanity against their common oppressor. The Veltari brought their expertise in stealth technology. The Morden offered their powerful industrial worlds. The Zeknari provided crucial intelligence about Zephyrian military movements. But the most important ally came from within the Zephyrian Empire itself. Elena Rodriguez had been working to identify moderate Zephyrian factions who might be willing to prevent the final protocol. What she found was a growing movement of younger Zephyrians who questioned their species' brutal policies. "Not all Zephyrians support the genocide," she reported to Admiral Harper during a secret communication. "There's a faction led by someone called Morvek who believes the Empire has become corrupt and evil. They're willing to help us stop the final protocol." This was exactly what humanity needed. With Zephyrian allies providing inside information, the human forces could strike at the heart of the Empire before the final protocol could be activated. The first major operation was the liberation of the Centauri system. The system contained 3 inhabited worlds with a combined population of over 50 million aliens, all of whom had been living under Zephyrian oppression for millennia. Captain Steve Wilson led the assault force. The ships that emerged from human space were like nothing the Zephyrian defenders had ever seen. They appeared without warning, moving faster than should be possible, firing weapons that seemed to bend the laws of physics. Zephyrian Command Vessel. This is Captain Wilson of the Terran Resurgence Coalition. Steve broadcast on all frequencies. You have 10 minutes to evacuate this system. Any ship that remains will be considered hostile. The Zephyrian commander's response was predictable. Humans are extinct. This deception will not save you from justice. Then let me educate you about what extinction really looks like, Steve replied. The battle lasted exactly 7 minutes. When it was over, the Zephyrian fleet was completely destroyed, and not a single human ship had taken damage. The alien populations of the Centauri worlds watched in amazement as their liberators announced themselves to the galaxy. Similar operations were taking place across the galaxy. Human forces, supported by alien rebels, struck at Zephyrian military installations with precision and overwhelming force, but they were careful to minimize civilian casualties. This wasn't a war of revenge. It was a war of liberation. The psychological impact was enormous. For 30,000 years, the Zephyrian Empire had maintained power through the myth of their invincibility. Suddenly, they were losing battles against an enemy they claimed didn't exist. High Counselor Zexron called for an emergency session of the ruling council. Elena Rodriguez listened as panic spread through the Zephyrian leadership. The humans have technology we don't understand, one counselor reported. Their ships appear to violate several fundamental laws of physics. Our weapons are useless against them. How many ships do they have? Zexran demanded. Intelligence suggests at least 1,000 combat vessels, with more being produced every day. And they're not fighting alone. Half the species in the Empire are joining their rebellion. Then we activate the final protocol immediately, Zexron decided. If we cannot defeat them militarily, we destroy everything they might want to save. But Elena was ready for this. The moment the order was given, she transmitted the authorization codes to Admiral Harper. Human forces throughout the galaxy moved immediately to secure the final protocol weapons before they could be used. The race was on. Zephyrian forces were rushing to activate planet-destroying weapons on hundreds of worlds. Human and allied forces were racing to stop them. The outcome would determine not just the fate of humanity, but the survival of every other species in the galaxy. On Earth, Katie Wells watched as the final phase of the planet's restoration began. Ancient machines rose from the ocean floors, ready to defend their homeworld. The planet that had been declared dead was about to become the center of a new galactic civilization. Phoenix, Admiral Harper asked the AI, what are our chances? Based on current force deployments and tactical analysis, we have a 73% probability of preventing the final protocol activation. However, the cost will be enormous. Acceptable, the Admiral replied. Begin the final assault. Humanity had hidden in the shadows for 30,000 years, growing stronger while their enemies grew complacent. Now they would reveal the full extent of their power to a galaxy that had forgotten they existed. The storm was gathering, and soon it would break over the Zephyrian Empire with the force of 300 centuries of accumulated justice. The truth came in pieces, like fragments of a broken mirror reflecting a reality that no one in the galaxy had suspected. Jake Morrison sat in the command center of the reactivated human base on Luna, watching as Phoenix downloaded 30,000 years of hidden history into the Arsenal's main computers. Show them, Admiral Lisa Harper ordered. The main display screen filled with images from the past, recordings that had been preserved in the deepest vaults of human memory. Jake watched in amazement as the real story of humanity's last days unfolded. Before him, The Zephyrian Empire had not simply conquered Earth through superior military force. They had won through deception, treachery, and the systematic extermination of billions of innocent people. The official Zephyrian history claims they were defending themselves against human aggression, Colonel Ryan Blake explained to the assembled group. They say humans were a violent species that threatened galactic peace. But the truth is very different. The screen showed peaceful human colonies, trading ships, diplomatic missions. Humanity had been trying to join the galactic community as equals when the Zephyrians launched their surprise attack. There had been no provocation, no threat. Just the cold calculation that humans were too intelligent and adaptable to be allowed to survive. We were winning, Ryan continued, not through warfare, but through innovation and diplomacy. Other alien species were beginning to respect us, to see us as valuable partners. The Zephyrians couldn't allow that to happen. Dr. Elena Rodriguez had managed to infiltrate the Zephyrian High Council chambers. Using technology hidden in her research equipment, she was recording their emergency session. The discussion was exactly what she had expected. The reports are confirmed, High Counselor Zexeron announced to the assembled aliens. Humans are alive and active throughout our territory. The extinction protocols failed. How is this possible? Demanded another counselor. We destroyed every human world. We hunted down every survivor. Apparently not every survivor, Zexeron replied grimly. Intelligence suggests they had a contingency plan. Hidden bases, secret colonies, sleeper agents embedded in our society for thousands of years. Elena continued recording as the counselors debated their response. What she heard confirmed humanity's worst fears about their former enemies. The Zephyrians weren't just genocidal. They were terrified of what humanity might become. Back in the arsenal, Phoenix was revealing more secrets to the gathered humans. The Great Purge wasn't the first time they tried to destroy a younger species, the AI explained. The Zephyrians have eliminated at least 12 other civilizations over the past 100,000 years. Captain Steve Wilson, who had been studying the historical records, looked up from his console. They follow the same pattern every time. Allow the new species to develop until they become competitive, then manufacture a crisis to justify complete extermination. Why? Asked Katie Wells, who was still struggling to understand the scope of the deception. Because they're old, Ryan Blake answered. Ancient. Their species has been spacefaring for 500,000 years, but they stopped advancing culturally and technologically long ago. They maintain power not through innovation, but by preventing anyone else from challenging them. The revelation was staggering. The Zephyrian Empire wasn't a coalition of equal species working together for galactic peace. It was a system designed to keep one ancient race in control by preventing any other species from reaching their full potential. But we survived, Admiral, Harper said with quiet pride. Because we were smarter than they thought. Phoenix displayed the details of humanity's escape plan. It had been brilliant in its simplicity. While the Zephyrians focused on destroying visible human targets, the real evacuation was taking place in secret. Entire populations had been relocated to hidden worlds. Key personnel had been placed in suspended animation. The most advanced technology had been stored in facilities like the Arsenal. Commander Blake designed the deception perfectly, Phoenix continued. The Zephyrians were allowed to capture and destroy decoy cities filled with automated systems. They believed they were killing millions of humans, but most of the real population was already safely hidden. The plan had required incredible sacrifice. Thousands of volunteers had stayed behind to maintain the illusion, knowing they would not survive. but their sacrifice had saved billions of others and given humanity the time it needed to prepare for this moment. On Earth's surface, something remarkable was happening. The planet that the Zephyrians had declared dead was showing signs of life. Ancient terraforming systems, hidden deep beneath the surface, were beginning to reactivate. The atmosphere was slowly cleaning itself. Dead oceans were stirring with microscopic organisms that had survived in stasis for 300 centuries. Katie Wells was monitoring the process from Luna. "It's incredible," she reported to Admiral Harper. "The entire biosphere was designed to regenerate itself when the right conditions were met." Phoenix's activation signal didn't just wake up humans. It woke up the planet itself. But the most shocking revelation came when Dr. Rodriguez transmitted her recording of the Zephyrian High Council meeting. The alien leaders weren't just discussing military responses to the human resurgence. They were debating whether to activate something called the Final Protocol. "What's the Final Protocol?" Jake asked Phoenix. The AI's response chilled everyone in the room. "According to our intelligence, it's a plan to destroy every planet in the galaxy that has ever been inhabited by humans. They would rather commit universal genocide than risk losing control of the Empire." Admiral Harper stood silent for a long moment, processing this information. Then she turned to her assembled staff. "How many species currently live under Zephyrian rule?" Captain Wilson consulted his database. Approximately 47 different alien races across 3,000 star systems. Total population is estimated at over 500 billion sentient beings. And they would kill them all to maintain power? According to their own records, yes. The Final Protocol includes the destruction of any world that might harbor human sympathizers or hidden human populations. This changed everything. Humanity's war of vengeance had suddenly become something much larger. They weren't just fighting to reclaim their place in the galaxy. They were fighting to prevent the largest act of genocide in galactic history. Colonel Blake began issuing new orders. "Contact every hidden colony immediately. Tell them about the Final Protocol. We need to accelerate our timeline." "What about our alien allies?" asked Lieutenant Kevin Park. "Some species in the Empire have been helping our agents for years. We protect them," Admiral Harper decided. "All of them. This isn't just about human survival anymore. We're the only force in the galaxy capable of stopping the Zephyrians from destroying everything." Elena Rodriguez was still listening to the High Council debate when she heard something that made her blood freeze. One of the counselors was reading from an ancient text, describing the location of hidden human bases throughout the galaxy. "The information was accurate, terrifyingly accurate. How do they know?" she whispered into her communicator. Phoenix's voice came back immediately. "They've been hunting us for 30,000 years. They never stopped. Every discovery of a human artifact, every suspicious energy reading, every unexplained disappearance. They've been mapping our network piece by piece. Then why haven't they attacked? Because they weren't sure how extensive our preparations were. But now they know we're active again. They won't wait any longer. The Final Protocol will be activated within days." The race was on. Humanity had spent 30,000 years preparing for this moment, but they had expected to choose the timing of their revelation. Instead, they would have to act immediately to prevent the destruction of half the galaxy. Admiral Harper called for an emergency assembly of all human forces. Representatives from every hidden colony, every secret base, every sleeper cell network. The message was simple. The time for hiding was over. Humanity was about to reveal itself to the galaxy, not as a species seeking vengeance, but as the only hope for preventing universal annihilation. The Zephyrians had made a critical mistake. In their fear of human resurgence, they had revealed their true nature to their own people. The final protocol wasn't just a threat to humanity. It was a threat to every species in the galaxy except their own. And that would be their downfall. Dr. Elena Rodriguez moved quickly through the darkened corridors of the research facility. It was well past midnight on the Zephyrian capital world, and the building was empty except for security guards. She had worked here for 15 years, earning the trust and respect of her alien colleagues. None of them suspected that beneath her careful disguise, she was completely human. The Phoenix signal had changed everything. After generations of waiting, the time had finally come to reveal the truth. Elena reached her private laboratory and sealed the door behind her. From a hidden compartment, she retrieved a device that looked like an ordinary data tablet. But this tablet contained the names and locations of every human sleeper agent on the planet. There were more than she had expected. Hundreds of families who had lived for decades as loyal Zephyrian citizens while secretly maintaining their human heritage. Teachers, engineers, government workers, even military officers. All of them waiting for this moment. Elena began sending the activation codes. One by one, across the planet, humans began to remember who they really were. The process was careful and slow. Too many sudden disappearances would attract attention. But the network was vast, and it had been planned for thousands of years. Meanwhile, on Earth's moon, Kyle Bennett was having the strangest day of his career. He had been supervising mining operations on what the aliens called dead rock for 3 years. The work was boring but well paid. The Zephyrians valued the rare minerals that could be extracted from Luna's surface. That morning, his deep-core drill had broken through into what appeared to be a hollow space. This wasn't unusual. The moon was riddled with old lava tubes and natural caves. But when Kyle sent a probe down to investigate, what he found made no sense at all. The cavity was artificial, massive, and it contained structures that looked like they had been built by an advanced civilization. The probe's cameras showed vast corridors lined with machinery, all in perfect condition despite obvious age. "Danny, come look at this," Kyle called to his assistant foreman. Danny Martinez had been working the lunar mines longer than anyone else on the crew. "What the hell is that?" Danny asked, staring at the probe's video feed. "I have no idea, but it's huge. The radar shows this complex extends for dozens of kilometers under the surface." What Kyle didn't know was that his mining operation had accidentally breached the outer wall of the arsenal, humanity's greatest military secret. Hidden beneath Luna's surface for 30,000 years, the facility had been waiting patiently for the Phoenix signal to reactivate its systems. Deep in the arsenal's core, Admiral Lisa Harper felt consciousness returning slowly. The cryogenic. Sleep had been deeper than anything attempted before. 30,000 years of suspended animation, waiting for the day when humanity would need her again. The awakening process was gradual. First came awareness, then memory, then the flood of information from the arsenal's computers. The Phoenix signal had triggered her revival, along with thousands of other military personnel who had volunteered for the long sleep. Lisa sat up in her cryogenic pod and looked around the medical bay. Other pods were opening throughout the facility. Men and women who had been humanity's finest soldiers, scientists, and strategists were awakening to a galaxy that had forgotten they ever existed. Admiral Harper? A technician approached her pod. He was young, probably born after the Great Purge. "I'm Lieutenant Kevin Park. We've been monitoring your revival process." "How long?" Lisa asked, her voice rough from the long sleep. 30,417 years. The Arsenal's automated systems have maintained themselves perfectly. Everything is ready. Lisa nodded and stepped out of the pod. Her body felt stiff but functional. The medical systems had done their job well. Status report. Phoenix Protocol is active. Sleeper cells are awakening across the galaxy. The hidden colonies have received the signal and are beginning to mobilize. The Zephyrian Empire has no idea what's coming. On the other side of the facility, Colonel Ryan Blake was experiencing his own awakening. He had been humanity's top strategic mind before the Great Purge, the architect of the plan that had saved their species from extinction. Now he was needed again. "Sir," a young officer greeted him as he left his medical pod. "I'm Captain Steve." "Wilson! The tactical computers have been running continuous updates based on intelligence gathered by our agents throughout the Empire." Ryan stretched his muscles and looked around the command center. Banks of computers showed real-time data from across the galaxy. Troop movements, fleet positions, political developments. The hidden human network had been watching and learning for 300 centuries. "Show me the current situation," Ryan ordered. The main display lit up with a map of the galaxy. Red indicators showed Zephyrian military positions. Blue markers indicated human assets. There were far more blue markers than Ryan had dared to hope. "We have operational bases in every major star system," Captain Wilson explained. "Hidden colonies that have grown into substantial populations, sleeper agents in key positions throughout their government and military, and our technology has advanced significantly during the hibernation period." Back on the surface of Luna, Kyle Bennett was getting nervous. The mining crew had opened a larger access tunnel into the underground complex, and what they found was impossible to explain. The corridors were clean and well lit, as if someone had been maintaining them. Machines hummed with quiet efficiency, and everywhere were symbols that the Universal Translator identified as ancient human writing. "We need to report this," Kyle told his team. "This is way beyond anything we're qualified to handle." But before he could contact the Zephyrian authorities, the complex's defense systems activated. Automated barriers sealed the access tunnel. Emergency protocols engaged throughout the facility. The arsenal was protecting itself. Deep underground, Admiral Harper was reviewing the tactical situation with her staff. The arsenal contained weapons and ships that had been waiting 30,000 years to be used. More importantly, it contained the complete records of human civilization, preserved for the day when humanity would reclaim its place in the galaxy. "The Zephyrians have grown complacent," she told her assembled officers. 300 centuries without a real challenge have made them weak. Their technology has barely advanced since the Purge. Meanwhile, our automated research systems have continued developing new weapons and defenses. Colonel Blake joined the briefing. "The hidden colonies report readiness levels above our most optimistic projections. We have a full population of over 2 billion humans spread across 40 star systems. Industrial capacity is sufficient to support a major military campaign." "And our agents inside their government?" Admiral Harper asked. "In position and ready?" "Dr. Rodriguez reports that she can access the Zephyrian Central Command computers whenever. We give the order. We'll know about their military responses before their own commanders do." On Kepler 442b, Vextar was learning just how wrong the official history really was. The military team sent to investigate his discovery had found much more than a buried human city. They had found an active human base, complete with defensive systems that had kept it hidden for millennia. "This changes everything," the Zephyrian commander told Vextar. If there's one hidden human installation, there could be dozens, hundreds even. What does this mean for the Empire? Vextar asked. It means we've been living a lie for 30,000 years. The humans aren't extinct. They've been hiding, waiting, planning, and now they're starting to reveal themselves. Across the galaxy, similar discoveries were being made. Ancient human facilities were powering up. Ships that had been hidden in deep space were coming online. People who had lived their entire lives as aliens were suddenly remembering their true heritage. The Zephyrian Empire was about to face an enemy they thought they had destroyed. An enemy that had spent 30,000 years preparing for this moment. An enemy that remembered every injustice, every betrayal, every life lost in the Great Purge. Humanity was awakening, and they were not the same species the Zephyrians had tried to exterminate. They were stronger, smarter, and infinitely more dangerous. The long sleep was over, and the time for vengeance had begun. The mining drill screamed as it cut through the ancient rock on Kepler 442b. Vextar wiped the sweat from his scaled forehead and checked the readings again. Something was wrong. The drill had hit metal at a depth where no metal should exist. The Zephyrian archaeologist called his team over to examine the strange discovery. "Look at this," Vextar said, pointing at the scanner display. "There's a massive structure down there. It's been buried for thousands of years." His assistant, Krelva, moved closer to see the readings. "Could it be natural formation?" "No," Vextar replied. "The patterns are too regular, too organized. This is artificial construction." 3 days later, they had excavated enough to reveal a doorway. The metal was unlike anything they had seen before. It was smooth and silver, with strange symbols carved into its surface. The symbols looked familiar, but Vextar couldn't place where he had seen them before. "These markings," he said to his team, "run them through the historical database. I want to know what civilization made this." The results came back an hour later. Krelva's voice was barely a whisper when she read the findings. The symbols match ancient human writing. Multiple human languages, actually. Vextar felt his blood turn cold. Humans had been extinct for 30,000 years. Everyone knew this. The Zephyrian Empire had made sure of it. There should be no human structures on this planet. There should be no human structures anywhere. Meanwhile, on the other side of the galaxy, Jake Morrison was having his own problems. His cargo ship Star Runner had detected a derelict vessel floating in dead space. The ship looked old, very old. But it was intact, and in Jake's line of work, intact meant valuable. "What do you think, Danny?" Jake asked his engineer. Danny Clark was looking at the scanner readings with a confused expression. "I've never seen a design like this," Danny said. "The hull material is reading as some kind of advanced alloy, way more advanced than anything we use now. Can we dock with it?" "Yeah, but Jake, something's weird about this ship. The power readings are all over the place. It's like something's trying to wake up inside." Jake made his decision. "Prep the docking tube. Katie, you're with me. Tony, keep the engines warm in case we need to leave fast." Katie Wells grabbed her scanner and followed Jake into the airlock. She was the team's biologist, but she also knew her way around alien technology. Tony Rodriguez stayed at the controls, ready to undock at the first sign of trouble. The derelict ship's airlock opened, without resistance. Inside, the corridors were dark, but surprisingly clean. Emergency lighting flickered on as they moved deeper into the vessel. The walls were covered with symbols that looked disturbingly familiar. "Jake," Katie whispered, "these symbols, they're the same ones we saw in that museum on Centauri Prime, the human exhibit." That's impossible. Humans are extinct. They reached what appeared to be the bridge. Banks of dark screens surrounded a central chair. As soon as Jake stepped into the room, the screens began to glow. A voice filled the air, speaking in a language that universal translators immediately recognized as ancient English. "Phoenix Protocol activated," the voice said. "Awaiting authentication." Jake and Katie looked at each other. "Phoenix?" Jake said aloud. "Authentication accepted. Welcome aboard the HSS Endeavor. I am Phoenix, the ship's artificial intelligence. I have been waiting for 30,000 years. Katie's scanner was going crazy. "Jake, this AI is more advanced than anything in the current galactic database, by decades at least." "Phoenix," Jake said carefully. "You said you've been waiting. Waiting for what?" "For the signal to begin the final phase. The Zephyrians believed they destroyed humanity 30,000 years ago. They were wrong. We have been patient. We have been preparing. And now, the time has come." The screens around the bridge lit up with star charts, technical diagrams, and what looked like battle plans. Phoenix continued speaking. "Humanity did not die in the Great Purge. We allowed the Zephyrians to think they had won while our real forces went into hiding. Secret colonies, hidden bases, sleeper agents embedded throughout their empire, all waiting for this moment." Jake felt his legs go weak. "You're saying humans are still alive?" "More than alive. We are ready. The signal I am about to transmit will awaken every hidden human settlement in the galaxy. Every agent who has lived in disguise among alien populations. Every secret base that has waited in silence." "But why now?" Katie asked. "Because 30,000 years was the calculated time needed for the Zephyrian Empire to grow complacent. For their technology to stagnate. For their guard to drop completely. Humanity has spent these millennia advancing while our enemies grew lazy with unopposed power." Phoenix began transmitting. Across the galaxy, ancient receivers picked up the signal. On a dozen worlds hidden beneath alien cities, human bases began to stir. People who had lived their entire lives pretending to be other species suddenly remembered who they really were. On the Zephyrian capital world, Dr. Elena Rodriguez was working late in her laboratory when her computer chimed with an incoming message. She looked around to make sure she was alone, then opened the encrypted file. The message was simple. "Phoenix has risen. Begin Renaissance Protocol." Elena had waited her whole life for this message. Her parents had waited. Her grandparents had waited. For generations, her family had lived as Zephyrians, contributing to their society while secretly preparing for this day. She opened a hidden panel in her desk and removed a small device. With shaking hands, she activated it. All across the planet, similar devices began to activate as other sleeper agents received the same signal. Back on Kepler 442b, Vextar was having problems of his own. The human structure his team had discovered was much larger than they had initially thought. Ground-penetrating scans revealed a complex that stretched for kilometers underground. "This isn't just a building," he told his supervisor over the communication link. "This is an entire city, a human city that's been hidden beneath the surface for thousands of years." "That's impossible," came the reply. "Humans built nothing on Kepler 442b. They never even visited that system." "Then explain this," Vextar said, sending the scan data. "Because according to these readings, this complex has been here since before the Great Purge, and it's still partially operational." The silence on the other end of the communication lasted for several minutes. Finally, his supervisor spoke again. Seal the site immediately. No one else is to know about this discovery. I'm sending a military team, but it was too late for secrecy. Phoenix's signal had reached even this remote world, and deep beneath the surface, ancient systems began to wake up. Lights that had been dark for 30 millennia started to glow. Machines that had waited patiently in sleep mode began their startup sequences. The Zephyrian Empire was about to learn that their greatest victory had been built on a lie. Humanity had never truly fallen. They had simply been waiting for the right moment to rise again, and that moment had finally come.